Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Chopping Block. Every couple weeks, the four of us get together and give the industry insider's perspective on the crypto topics of the day. So first up, we'll do some intros. First, we've got Tom, the DeFi maven and master of memes. Next, we've got Tarun, the Giga Brain and Grand Poobah at Gauntlet. And today, we've got a special guest, Avery, who is the chief architect of Aptos. And then finally, we've got myself. I'm Haseeb, the head hype man at Dragonfly. So we are early stage investors in crypto, but I want to caveat that nothing we say here is investment advice, legal advice, or even life advice. Please see choppingblock.xyz for more disclosures. So this is the first time that we are doing the chopping block with a live audience here in Consensus in Austin. How are you guys finding Consensus? You've had a good time. Austin, I will say the weather here has been significantly better than at ETH Denver. What are you guys' impressions so far from Austin?
I forgot that there are so many layer ones in the world. You know, like I feel like I live in ETH land, and like I just like don't. I'm like, whoa, holy shit, where did all these layer ones come from? Like some that I just like didn't realize still had huge communities.
Are you firing a shot at our guest here today?
No. I'm talking about like Cardano and Tron and stuff. Like I just like had not realized there were so many. You know, like it's like a part of the world that's like excised from my brain. I had like a Cardano lobotomy or something.
Yeah, there's something around like inverse correlation with like sponsorship size for like a bear market. Like if you look at like the top sponsors, it's like it's literally like Tron, Hedera, someone else. It's like what like.
Yeah, you did actually, in the last show, there was some offhand comment you made about Cardano that I believe set the Cardano army on you. Tarun, do you want to describe, like from the trenches, what was it like going through that experience as a Cardano veteran?
I got to say, the Cardano army is quite mid compared to the Link army. The Link army, I'm afraid of angering. Cardano army, whatever. Like, they're kind of weak sauce nowadays.
Wow. Okay, that's bold. So,
well, I'm waiting to see what the reply to that is, because now I'm guaranteed to get one.
Oh, they love you. They love you. I've noticed. They're big fans. Avery, tell us about the Aptos army. By the way, it's pronounced Aptos, but I really want to say Aptos. Why don't you just pronounce it the way that everyone wants to pronounce it?
That's a good question. The way we came with the name Aptos, not Aptos, is because the way the technology was built was in the Bay Area back at Meta, Facebook days, and we wanted to definitely pay homage to the fact that that's where a lot of the people came from, and that's where a lot of the work came from. The other reason, of course, is because Aptos is a great town about an hour south of the Bay Area. It's wonderful for beach town as well as surfing and other fun things. And it actually is from an indigenous word, which kind of refers to the people. And we thought that was the best way to think about who we're building for and why we're doing what we're doing.
There's something around layer ones and California beaches.
Yeah. I was about to say, like, Solana is a beach, right? In SoCal?
Yeah. There's a lot of names derived from California towns in this community, for sure.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for the Baker's Beach Layer 1 to come along. Interesting. Okay, so Aptos, it's got a hard-to-pronounce name. Well, not hard to pronounce, but unintuitively to pronounce. But you say you're inspired by the people of Aptos, the town, but I assume that's not where your users are. We've heard that a lot of your users are in Korea, and that's where Aptos is getting a lot of traction. Talk to us about what's going on in Korea right now, because there's a lot of talk about U.S. regulation, a lot of talk about Hong Kong, but we don't talk on the show very often about Korea. Of course, it's a big market for crypto. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, I think one thing we talked about off stage a little bit was Korea's been a market that's been very excited about this technology space. They're excited about things like Luna, about Clayton blockchain as well. And I think from those early days, people have been building in many different projects, and especially gaming has been one of those areas that's picked up a lot of steam inside of Korea. Where we partner with a bunch of different Korean companies, including NPixel, which is a AAA gaming studio to build on top of Aptos, but many others that have not been announced yet. We had our hackathon recently, earlier this year, where I think more than 450 developers came through and built some incredible projects. And so what we've seen from that experience is just that the area is just one of the few places where there's kind of first world builders with top-rate developers that are moving the industry forward, whereas places like the U.S. are actually not going as quickly, and that's really exciting to us.
Nice. So one of the things that Aptos is known for is it's a story about building a more performant blockchain, and we've heard that story before. Obviously, Solana in the last cycle was the predominant purveyor of this story, is that we're building a new blockchain from the ground up, totally different stack, totally different architecture. and we're going to make it really fast and really performant. So tell us how you guys. By the way, I should caveat. I forgot to mention this, that Dragonfly is an investor into Aptos. How do you guys think about performance in a world that's full of layer ones talking about how performant they are?
That's a great question. I think this debate is something we really want to talk more about. I mean, when people talk about transactions per second, let's start off with what a transaction is. The way we define transaction is we talk about user transactions, not system transactions. Let's start with that. System transactions, like, we, for instance, in our network, we also have a transaction that goes off periodically so that we can update the clock. That's not something that we count as a user transaction. Like, that's not something that users are interacting with. Also, some transactions can be composed of one or more operations. Some very small transactions might be very fast, and very large transactions be very slow. So it's not a really good way to think about, like, how much transactions can this system do versus that system do, especially when you take into account a lot of these nuances. So our plan is to really put out transparency in the market. How do we create a definition which is, again, from our point of view, a user-signed set of actions that occur in the network, and then thinking about what databases have been in the past, where TPC has done a phenomenal job in terms of understanding different kinds of use cases and access patterns specific to workloads that are common to industry, and then evaluating these in a reproducible environments that are going to be used to kind of compare what's appropriate for your workloads and for your application specifically.
So basically, if I can summarize, benchmarking in crypto kind of sucks. Like, there basically is no real benchmarking. It's like...
Let's ask the audience. I mean, like, do you guys feel like there's a great way out there to tell how blockchains are compared to each other?
No. I mean, the status quo today is that a blockchain will basically say, I built a new fast thing. And then they will put out their own stats that says, I have 200,000 transactions per second, and Solana only does 20 transactions per second under my blah, blah, blah. And they generally don't publish code. They don't publish like how they do this. They don't run any benchmarks repeatedly, which is what real benchmarking companies do. Why do you guys think that we don't have like a benchmarking company or any benchmarking infrastructure in crypto yet?
I think, like, theoretically it's actually impossible, in the sense that, like, if I'm, say, a virtual machine that is something where I execute fully functionally, then a single transaction corresponds to a long execution trace, versus, say, something where it's procedural, where, like, I actually have child transactions that are generated, and so I get the same input. The input-output mapping is the same, but one of them creates a bunch of extra transactions that get written. And that trade-off will kind of inevitably always exist. For instance, in GPUs, NVIDIA and AMD would always like make kind of weird benchmarks to compare their throughput. They would never just be like, we do this many flops on BLAST, which is like the basic linear algebra system, like the main sort of library for testing this type of stuff. They would instead say something like, oh, well, our warp bandwidth is really good, or we read particular parts of RAM really fast. And I think there's actually this inevitability in something technically complex that you have like this Goodhart's law type of thing where people start inventing metrics to optimize because their thing is optimized for it. And so then you kind of can't, it's purposely like adversarial in that sense.
But that's why you need independent benchmarking, right? Like if you have the benchmarks invented by the company that's offering the product, they're going to find some obscure tiny little thing that they're the best on.
Who's going to do that?
That's the question I'm asking. I mean, I don't know.
We're going to do it. So
well, but you're not independent.
Yeah, you're not
we're not independent.
That's the
But I
problem.
think what we can do is at least start to put out what repeatable benchmarks look like, what workloads look like, and then we can get input from the community and get other L1s and other application designers to give us feedback. Like, so it might be curious to know like how fast do you mint 1 million NFTs, and if these NFTs are of certain types of complexity, or how fast can I transfer value from one customer to another, and how much parallelism can I get out of that and extract from it. So even if the EVM, or sorry, not the EVM, but the VM environments are very different, and you can still evaluate on a per workload basis, what is your throughput of that workload. And it may not be defined in transactions per second, maybe it's in operations per second, whatever. But those kind of apples to apples application benchmarks are something that we really feel passionate about.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I would add though is that all of these different blockchains have different memory models. So like, for instance, Uniswap works great on global state access virtual machines like ETH. But it's very hard in kind of software transactional memory things like Move, or like it has a huge worst case behavior. And so you somehow have to make sure that you're benchmarking workloads under worst case behaviors, average case behaviors, and stuff in the middle. And that whole suite is where I think people's marketing comes in. Is like some people have really high deviation between their worst case benchmarks and average case benchmarks, and they basically report the better of the two of them. And it's just like I'm not so sure you can get around this type of stuff so transparently.
I think that's where like TPC has done a pretty decent job, right? Like they've actually come up with a series of different benchmarks or different use cases, and then if there are certain benchmarks people perform well on or poorly on, you can evaluate them for yourself. And I think that'd be wonderful if we had that kind of transparency in this industry.
I tend to agree with that. I think, look, if somebody does the heavy lifting of making it easy for an unaffiliated organization to step in and say, aha, okay, here is a good framework around independent benchmarking. Let's go in and do it. And then like once and for all, kill the concept of layer ones, like each inventing their own way of like, I'm the fastest because here's this super contorted reason why my blockchain can do more X, Y, Z.
To be fair, though, like I said, in the history of computing and hardware, it's always that XKCD comic of the meme of like, there are 15 standards. I'm going to make one standard that unifies them all. Tomorrow, there are now 16 standards.
To be clear, right now there's 0 standards for benchmarking. So I think going
I don't
from 0
think
to 1
I don't think
is a
there's
big
0. I
change.
think there's like 100. Like every single
there
person
is
makes
not.
their
It's
own.
like an
Who's
independent
published
one.
anything?
Like
There's
even in
nothing.
computing, right? Like
nothing.
people don't actually like care about flops anymore. They care about like workbench scoring and like workloads that are actually representative of people who are using this for.
But for custom hardware, people don't do that, right? For GPUs in particular look more like blockchains in terms of the way people benchmark them. And it's like they've had this kind of like weird game where it's like you really do have this good hard solve problem where like everyone just makes up a benchmark that's easy to optimize for them.
Yeah, but like when someone's reviewing a GPU, like it depends on the use case, obviously. Maybe for something like proof generation or whatever, it's a different story or machine learning. But like if you're using it for gaming and graphics, like it gets reported.
So one of the interesting caveats to this is that in sort of right around the time that people started realizing that you could do fixed precision deep learning, so you can use like normal graphics cards and not get a ton of errors. AMD was actually winning on all the like gaming benchmarks, all the like how video rendering benchmarks, but they completely missed the fact that for some other applications like CUDA and then sort of like the structure of the NVIDIA chips was just like orders of magnitude better. And like that's why AMD sort of lost the race in a lot of ways. Was that they were like optimizing on the wrong benchmark for 10 years and then NVIDIA just like kicked them in the face.
Well, it's very possible that we see that in blockchains. That like the blockchain that's best at Uniswap, which is sort of layer 1 or Gen 1 blockchains is like, okay, a lot of DeFi, a lot of these kinds of use cases. Maybe in the next generation it's gaming or it's some other thing that has totally different access patterns.
And we'll have a different benchmark that replicates that. So there's
Let's make a
that.
full suite. Let's have a full suite of
Full
benchmarks.
suite. That's a great word, a full suite. Okay, so moving away from Aptos, let's talk about your little brother, Sui. So Aptos and Sui, you guys have had some drama over the years. I know that you guys are not the best of friends, like siblings. I feel like that's very normal sibling rivalry. So Sui has been under fire.
Step siblings.
Step siblings? No, the siblings.
They're
Come on, don't be like that.
They're all
Don't
our
be
former
like that.
coworkers. We definitely talk quite a bit.
So they love each other. They love each other deep down. So Sui, they've been under fire lately because they are not doing an airdrop. And that has they're doing like some weird sale thing, or I don't know what exactly they're doing. They're doing like some IEO type thing.
I think so. That's what to best of my knowledge, I think.
Yeah, okay, whatever.
It's like pseudo whitelist. That's like the weird part. It's like not anyone can enter the purchase thing.
Okay.
So that's where I'm confused. That's where I got confused.
Sure. Okay. Let's not speculate about that because obviously none of us on stage seem to know. But the interesting thing is that Sui decided not to do an airdrop, and this is kind of unique now. This is kind of like I feel like the story is actually not people are mad, like whatever, people are always mad. But the interesting thing is that Sui decided not to do an airdrop, and the current meta is that when you launch a layer 1, you always do an airdrop to the people who are playing around on your testnet, or the people who are validating early, or the people who are accomplishing certain tasks. So what do you guys think about this move from Sui? First of all, why do you think they didn't do an airdrop? And second, like, what do you think it means about the way that we're going to think about airdrops for little ones in the future?
Arbitrum's airdrop seems like it could have been a liability in the sense of like all the drama we talked about a couple weeks ago. I feel like that could scare people. I could see that.
No, but what does that have to do with an airdrop? That's just like token distribution. If you do it through an IEO, it's the same thing.
But
People
the
can still
problem
get
is you
mad
have
at
to do some weird orchestration where the foundation gets paid somehow, and you also do the airdrop. And the ordering in which you do those, they're sort of like
But if you sell it to retail on OKX
foundation
or whatever,
extractable value, and like unfortunately that has to exist somewhere in the middle, right? And that in and of itself probably causes infinite legal problems.
Well, also, I mean, if you do it through an IEO, right, you can KYC out people who might be U.S. residents, and so you can sort of create some liability buffer that way, which is, I think, kind of the intent. But you think about like what is the purpose of doing an airdrop, right? One is like maybe create some marketing and create some goodwill for the brand, and then two is like distribute the token more broadly versus like just having it with the team or the foundation or early investors. I don't know how like effective they are like doing either of those things, and I think what we've seen is just okay, it's this arms race, right, where people expect an airdrop, and the team has to go do Sybil, pruning to make sure that that's not going to. And then people develop more sophisticated ways to do like Sybil attacks, and then so it's just like, what are we really doing here? Is this actually effective at sort of either of the goals? And so I don't know. Maybe this will be sort of in the same way, doing airdrops or doing liquidity mining became the meta. Maybe this will be a new meta, and there'll be a new way to sort of do distribution going forward.
It's clearly true that this is probably a reaction to the regulatory situation in the U.S. Recently, the SEC filed a lawsuit against Bittrex, I think it was, where they claimed that Algorand was a security. And I don't know that Algorand did an airdrop, but I'm sure that they're somehow drawing the line of like, oh shit, layer ones are now more exposed than we thought they were, and so let's like be super careful about having any U.S. people own this thing by doing an IEO and not doing an airdrop. I assume that's where it's coming from because nobody likes getting trashed on Twitter, especially like the day that you're about to go to mainnet. Avery, any take on the drama at your sibling?
I'll just say that I think when Aptos launched, the foundation wanted to do an airdrop to really, I agree there are trade-offs here in terms of doing civil defense and things like that, but rewarding a lot of the community members who took the time to really help understand what Aptos was, build projects, help to run lots of nodes. I think more than like 15,000 nodes are run on Aptos, making it one of the largest networks even before it launched. And just show that sign of appreciation and goodwill towards them, retroactively, of course.
Okay, so not going to say anything negative about Sui. This is your chance. Everybody's ready for you to say something.
I think one thing I just comment on is that when you talk about Algorand specifically, I think one thing's called out in that particular document was the fact they did an ICO, and as one of the factors that led to that decision. And so, generally, I think that's a risk people can take.
Yeah.
The only thing I want to say is all of the Gensler Algorand 2018 video memes from the last 2 weeks were pretty hilarious. The ones of him like praising Algorand for not being secure.
Yeah, the moment that Gensler
that was pretty hilarious.
Has gone on the offensive, all of Twitter has basically trudged up everything he has ever said in a lecture and is trying to use it against him. To be honest, there's not that much stuff that's that bad. He's like, Algorand is very innovative. Whatever, that doesn't mean it's not a security. And then there was something that Brian Armstrong posted where Gensler said 70% of everything in crypto is a commodity, not a security. And Brian Armstrong was like, what? WTF? Like, what is this? Oh my God. Like, he's equivocating. In reality, I read that actually if you read the context, he's talking about by market cap. Because Bitcoin and Ether are 70% of the market. So actually, he didn't really say what Brian Armstrong thought he was saying. So anyway, people are mad at Gensler. What's interesting about the Bittrex case, where they named Algorand as a layer one, is that basically, if you look at the record of what the SEC has gone after in terms of enforcement actions, in terms of big L1s, they've gone after EOS, they've gone after Telegram, and then they haven't actually gone after Algorand, but they named EOS, Telegram, Ripple, basically being like the big L1s that they've gone after. And then most everything else they go after is like some random weird DeFi money market thing or some like basically borderline scam is most of the stuff that they end up bringing enforcement actions to, which seems to imply, or at least if you look at the pattern of behavior, L1s that are run by like reputable people seem to be mostly left alone. Right? He has not gone after the Algorands, the Solanas, the Polkadots, the blah blah blah. It's like the kind of shady ones that are not going to play well in court. I think that's like mostly the strategy that he's taken. So naming Algorand as a security seems like very out of character. I think it surprised a lot of people. Not because Algorand doesn't share a lot of features with other things that he's named as securities, because they did do an ICO, and obviously there's a team and blah, blah, blah. But it is surprising that something that's like a Turing Award winner, MIT professor, that's like not what the SEC goes after. Did you guys have any thoughts on that? Or Avery, what was your guys' reflection seeing them go after Algorand?
I think we were just very, again, pleased that we decided to do an airdrop and no ICOs. I think that was a big, important part for us when we thought about the way we distribute tokens to the community.
Fair enough. I mean, ICOs are dead at this point anyway, so I don't think that was a real decision.
Well, I mean, argue like again, token sales of any signs is something that's risky. And
I see.
That's something we did not do.
So even like a coin list type sale, you guys would okay, that makes sense. Cool. Okay, let's switch gears a little bit. So one of the interesting pieces of news this week was a hack, which is every week there's obviously some hack that goes on. But the interesting thing about this hack, so there was a protocol called Merlin Dex. And it was hacked for $2 million. It was some kind of rug pull, apparently. People are now speculating it's a rug pull, which happens, there's always rug pulls. But people started blaming Certic. So Certic is this auditing firm. They are kind of, the criticism against Certic, they're a very big auditing firm. They're criticized as being kind of like a sweatshop for audits, and that they just spit out lots and lots of audits. They're very cheap. And they do tons of them.
And there are a couple websites that have rankings of hacks by auditor, and they are number one by an order of magnitude.
Are they adjusting for total number of audits, though? That's the question.
No. This is just like TVL.
Okay.
Impacted.
Yeah. So I mean, Certic also they do a lot more audits, so you have to adjust for that. But anyway, so Certic. Merlin. I think their audit was completed the day before the rug pull happened, and so people were like, "Oh my God, Certic, how could you sign off on this audit?" Which is a very interesting thing to point the finger at, right? Because nobody was like, Merlin Deck, how dare you steal our money? It was Certic, how dare you certify that this guy's passed your audit? And so because it was a rug pull, so it was some admin key that just pulled the money.
Yeah, I think it was the egregiousness of the flaw. It had at time of deployment, it already had infinite approval for the asset set on some random EOA. So it was like anybody reading this could easily see that was going to be a rug pull. It's did they just rubber stamp it, or it wasn't some esoteric bug?
Maybe they're using GPT-4 to do the audits. Interesting. Okay, well, so what happened was that people got really mad at Certic, and then Certic, very out of character, first time I've ever seen this, Certic announced that they were going to pull together a compensation plan to basically pay everybody back who lost money in this $2 million hack. So to be clear, audits don't cost $2 million. Audits cost a lot less, especially from Certic. They cost a lot less than $2 million. So this is a crazy precedent for an auditing firm to offer to pay people back who used a protocol. What do you guys think about this?
I mean, we do that, so.
Wait, you guys do? Wait,
Yeah,
really? But they buy insurance.
Yeah, but what we cut if there is.
But that's an
something that goes
explicit
wrong.
thing, right? That's not the case with an audit. An audit doesn't give you insurance.
But I'm pointing out that there are people who do actually.
Yes, so if you agree to do that, then you should definitely pay it out. Certic never agreed to do anything. They're just responding to people getting mad on Twitter.
Well, to be fair, this is the 50th hack from them in a year. At some point, the PR damage does force you into being an insurer.
This is also in the realm of being feasible to repay, right? It's $2 million. It's not $20 million. It's not $100 million.
Think of it as the cost of PR for them.
Yeah, it's sort of like stores at breakage, baked in, and this is breakage for an auditor, basically.
I think it's fantastic. I mean, as someone who deals with auditing firms and also helps pair auditing firms with our ecosystem project specifically, it is amazing if they could guarantee any kind of payback for damages done, and it gives them a lot of summer security. Because our goal is really, how do you get applications from ideation into production as fast as possible? And audits are such a big part of that. That would just, I think, increase confidence and not have to go after 1, 2, 3, 4 auditors just to get that confidence in there.
I mean, so I understand it's a nice to have, right? If your auditor is actually also secretly insuring your protocol, that's obviously awesome. But the reality is that if that becomes, so first of all, now everything we know about crypto tells us that once it happens once, the next time everyone is going to be yelling at them to do it again, right? The next time something gets hacked by Certic, they'll be like, you paid out this one, why not that one? Now I'm going to sue you because blah, 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 whatever. And so you have this bundling now that it's going to be expected that if the hack is small, that the auditing firm is going to compensate.
So this is not actually the first time this has happened. So there was this, so in the Euler hack, I forget the name of this auditing firm, but it's a protocol where people stake in order to perform the audit. Do you know what I'm talking about? Anyway, they're the ones who audited the Euler hack code, and then basically they paid out partially. And they're actually, I think, fully drained right now. The amount that they put up for insurance.
This is explicitly insurance.
Yeah.
This is explicitly insurance.
But my point
That's what I'm saying. I think it's very different. Because look, if you're charging for insurance, then your insurance premiums are going to change, right?
Yeah.
Like because now, okay, look, we had a payout. Turns out, sometimes we have to pay this shit. So your insurance premiums go up, and they compensate for that. If now when you get an audit, they're also basically underwriting the cost of insurance, that means the price of audits goes up. Because now I have to look at the risk of like not only, okay, I give you this audit and then you go and like do stuff with it and fix your damn code. It's also like, well, I'm taking on the risk of giving you this audit that your community will get mad at me and demand that I pay you back for a hack. It just like breaks a lot of stuff. Like audits are already really expensive, right? Bundling this stuff, I mean, I don't know, so Avery, when you guys pay for audits, right? Because I think a lot of people in the audience don't really understand. They know that audits are important. How much do audits actually cost?
I mean, they can cost anywhere between, depends on the complexity of the code. I mean, the way auditors typically charge is, they have a certain, man hours or people hours they put into the project, and then they're going to say, like, how much code am I reviewing? What am I looking for specifically? So it really depends on the scope of your project. I mean, if you've got a simple 20-line project, probably almost nothing. If you've got, tens of thousands of lines of code and it's very complex, it could be hundreds of thousands of dollars easily or more than that.
Can you give us ranges for like what you guys have paid and what you've seen like companies in the Aptos ecosystem pay?
Definitely out of our respect to our auditors, we will keep those confidential. But like I said, anywhere between $5,000 to $100,000 could be very common for an audit.
Yeah, I mean, I think is Sherlock the one you were thinking of? Yeah,
Sherlock. That's it.
I think there's room for like better incentive compatibility, right? Like auditors are basically one of the few professions or goods or services where there's basically no warranty, right? Like if you hire a plumber and your pipes break the next day, they'll come back and fix it, or there's an implicit warranty or an explicit warranty. There's nothing like that for auditors, but also, for them, it could be an interesting new revenue stream. If you're basically reselling somebody else's insurance and you're sort of offloading the risk to like a reinsurer, that seems very attractive. But you're right that they should be like warehousing that risk to themselves. That's just like way too dangerous.
Yeah. Also, like that also means that if somebody's underwriting a protocol, like let's say you pay me $30,000 for this audit, right? Which okay, fine. You pay me $30,000. I do $30,000 worth of work. I now also have to know how big is your protocol going to be. Because if you're like a dinky little thing that's never going to get product market fit, then like, okay, sure, I'm fine underwriting that. But if you're going to get like $100 million in TVL, like, shit, I can't pay that back.
Yeah, so one thing I have seen in industry is that what auditors might do, and without, again, under contract, is that they'll pay for the bug bounty that could have been associated with that particular bug that was found.
That seems way more reasonable to me,
Yeah.
right? Because that's like, again, proportional to the fee that you're paying them as well.
Exactly.
So I think like if there's like actually a warranty such that if my my audit doesn't catch something egregious, then I'll give you the money back that you paid me for the audit. But like $2 million for like a $20,000 audit, obviously, like, I mean, again, this is an extraordinary circumstance. I don't know any of the details, but if this becomes a norm, it is going to make auditing insanely expensive. But it also belies the fact that, like, what are audits really in crypto? They're kind of overloaded, right? We think of audits as like, okay, well, an audit is a way to check whether you have like fundamental errors in your code, but it's also a like, sort of S&P or like Moody's like stamp of this is a AAA contract, and you can trust this contract. It's like investment grade contract, right? And we kind of rely on auditors to do both. We sort of don't acknowledge openly that that's what audits are for, but that is really what they're for. Like when people say like, oh, it's an audited contract, they generally don't even read the fucking audit. They just like, oh, it's audited by Trail of Bits, right? Like, great. Nobody opens up the audit and actually reads through it. They're just like, oh, Trail of Bits like signed off on this thing.
I read
Some people
I read
that.
the audits.
Yeah, what
I'm
are you
pretty sure
talking
to read
about?
Okay, all right, to be clear,
that's my job.
I'm saying the vast majority of users don't read the audits, right? All they do is they take that single bit of information.
I think after the last year, I definitely think people have started reading a lot more audits. Like professional people who are like trading used to not read audits, like professional trading firms in 2021, YOLO'd only. And after a lot of them got rug pulled, they have started deciding to bother reading things or asking, people who are paying attention.
I agree with that. Although I think a lot of that is a function of velocity rather than them learning. It's just that there's less stuff to do these days, so you have more time to read the audit.
Maybe.
Okay. Well, all right. Let's move on to our favorite topic, which is regulation. So you all know us as your favorite regulatory show. So there was a lawsuit that was filed from Coinbase against the SEC. So if you guys remember how this saga started, the SEC issued Coinbase a Wells notice, basically saying that, hey, you're doing some illegal stuff. We're not going to tell you exactly what, but we think you're in violation of securities laws. Coinbase has very vigorously in the press and to the public argued that the SEC is being unfair, they're not giving them clear guidance, and they intend to fight to the death. So then Coinbase has sued now the SEC preemptively to basically enjoin the SEC to affirmatively make a rule, which the SEC has never made rules. Like they basically, Gensler has argued repeatedly that we don't need any rules, we already have all the rules we need, the laws already cover crypto. He has basically said, like, look, you guys need to essentially make a rule about crypto or decline to make a rule explicitly. And either way, from what I've read, not being a lawyer and not knowing what the hell I'm talking about, they've basically, the strategy is that they're going to compel the SEC to say no, because obviously the SEC is not going to make a rule on crypto. They already said they don't want to. They're going to compel the SEC to say no, and then when the SEC says no, they're going to use that in court to say, look, the SEC is not making rules, they're being jerks, and hopefully they'll play well in front of a judge. So I don't know if that is correct, but that is what I read. Somebody else speculated who knows more about legal than I do. What do you guys think about the tussle right now between Coinbase and the SEC?
Elections coming up, right? So I think there's going to be
a year and a half.
I think it's just going to get dragged out, like until like right after the election.
So are you saying that it's politically unpopular for them to fight this fight in public right now?
Yeah, it's sort of. It seems like that. That's just my, not being in DC take.
Okay, what do you speculate the election is going to do to all the actions that are against crypto?
Well, I think the thing is, like, a lot of people are banking on the anti-crypto movement in their campaigns, right? Like between Elizabeth Warren and others.
Are there others? I thought it was really just Elizabeth Warren.
I mean, I feel like there's she has convinced people to nod politely when she talks about it, right? Which before they're like,
Sure.
we don't care, right? So that's a step up, I guess. But I guess my point is more like, I feel like Gensler's either going to try to like shove as many homework assignments under the teacher's door right before the election, or basically try to like lay low until after, depending on the outcome. So I don't know which strategy you take. The super aggressive, like just keep pummeling as many of these actions as possible, and then be like, look, I have such a good track record. Congress, give me $2.5 billion or whatever he requested, and keep going. Or whether it's like, do enough high-profile things, but then, like wait till the election, and if there's more support post-election, because right now it feels like it's like 50-50 on crypto stuff, as we saw in the hearing of him, then kind of like pull out the bazooka if the election goes in the right way.
I mean, it does seem like crypto, I don't know that like going anti-crypto is a great election strategy, so I agree with you on that front, is that like the reality is people who don't like crypto, like people who lost money in the last cycle especially, they already sold all their crypto. They don't own crypto anymore. So like a year from now, they're not really going to care that much about crypto. They care about inflation. They care about crime or whatever, immigration. Like these are the hot topic things that are going to be mainline issues in the election. If you're talking about crypto, the only people who care about crypto are people who own it. And people who own it, they want you to leave it alone. So I think like if you're appealing in a general election, independents, like, 10-15% of independents own crypto. And so you're mostly going to want to like not mess with crypto because you're just going to lose people, and nobody's going to vote for you because you're anti-crypto. It's just such a low, valence issue for most people.
I think on the flip side, like, Coinbase now is, or they have been, and they came out with this like NFT support crypto thing this week. They've really been trying to whip up like a grassroots movement around getting people to support crypto, and I think trying to sort of copy like the Uber or Airbnb playbook from like the early 2010s, which was extremely actually effective in terms of like convincing local regulators in the markets that they operated in, get Uber drivers, Uber users to apply political pressure. We haven't really seen that be effective in crypto, right? Like, despite the fact that arguably the user base is much, much larger than either of those apps, like there isn't really a grassroots very loud pro-crypto movement. And I don't really know why that is. I mean, they're trying, but it doesn't really seem like they're getting a very effective outcome.
These are people who are, the biggest crypto users are people who are perpetually on the internet. I don't think they're exactly like the grassroots. I'm going to go like rally at like my local city hall type of people.
Even though like, even like
I'm just saying,
send letters, call your representative, like
yeah, but the problem is
call your representative.
A lot of libertarians.
How many people who own crypto and bought in the last year have made a phone call.
That's a good point. Maybe a Telegram call or something like that.
That's
Yeah,
what I'm saying.
that's what we gotta do.
I
We
think
gotta open
the
up Telegram
generational
lines.
gap piece is actually quite important in
Do you,
assessing.
do you
this.
remember when what was it? It was like NOPA and SOPA, like the laws about like they were basically gonna cause a lot more internet censorship, and there was this big coordinated blackout by all the internet companies like Google and Reddit and all this stuff, and they like blacked out the homepage. I was gonna say like they should just like turn off all the blockchains one day, as like a protest move.
Sorry, CEO of Ethereum, can you turn off the blockchain? Thank you.
Just ask Vitalik, find Satoshi, you know, like we can, I mean, Aptos we can turn off, right? Like, Solana as well, No, sorry, I'm talking shit. But yeah, it does, I do agree with you that like it's, as much as it's good to see Coinbase trying to take this grassroots approach and get people energized by, hey, let's protect crypto, let's fight for this, it is hard. Because crypto, like, they are also like very individualistic, selfish people.
I think the thing that will work the most is A, obviously inflation, but then B, the end of the petrodollar hegemony. Like, it really does feel like, I think Chinese yuan transfers recently were like higher than USD transfers for like a week, which was like crazy.
In China, for
in
Chinese
China.
trade.
Yeah,
Chinese
yeah,
trade,
but
not
it
globally.
includes included exports, because like for instance, like France is paying in yuan for natural gas now. They're not paying in dollars anymore. Brazil, the same thing. So like there's kind of this interesting thing going on also where the petrodollar hegemony does seem to be its weakest point ever. Like everyone in the Middle East doesn't seem to give a shit about the dollar anymore. And I kind of think the anti-crypto equals anti-dollar movement is the one that will actually win through the next election. You heard it here first.
That seems a little like 200 IQ. I don't know if that's gonna quite penetrate the mainstream. But I like where your mind's at. That's interesting.
I think we're definitely excited for more clarity. That's something we've been. I think the whole industry is looking for. Aptos really recently joined the blockchain association, and so we're actually hoping that some of those legal efforts and clarity will help us to again build things the way that regulators want to see them being built.
Yeah, fair enough. So looking forward into this next year, obviously it's been you guys for Aptos. You guys have come into mainnet. You're seeing the light of day. You get to be a grown-up L1 now with everyone yelling at you and being mad all the time. What are you looking forward to over the next year, whether within the Aptos world or just like more broadly within crypto?
For Aptos, I think, well, I would say these are more broad crypto themes, which is, I think we're all waiting to see like how we leverage like Web3 and crypto to be the best utility for customers, and we haven't seen those mainstream applications yet hit into market, right? When I ask people like, what are you excited about crypto? It's like, oh, I liquid stake and I go to OpenSea. That's great. I mean, those are all wonderful things, but they're not like the way that internet applications have taken off with Netflix and with Amazon and with Google and all those fun things that are out there. And so, we need a way to demonstrate that utility at scale. And so, solving those problems of user experience, system infrastructure, and then working together and partnering and maybe even building some of those applications that actually can reach scale, kind of from our experience with building a Meta, I think is something that's really paramount, not just for us, but really for all of the industry going forward.
So actually, speaking of Meta, we were talking about this while we were outside. So I was just on a panel talking about AI, like the intersection of AI and crypto. And I know Meta actually has been in the news recently for like their metaverse stuff plus their AI stuff, like get behind in a couple ways. But what do you guys think about? So we had a show recently with Ilya from Near talking about the intersection of crypto and AI. I came out of that conversation feeling quite skeptical that there are that many interesting applications in the short term. When I say applications, I mean like investable crypto/AI networks or tokens or whatever. But you guys disagree with me. Give me your bull case. Give me the bull case for the intersection of crypto and AI, why there's going to be a ton of interesting stuff that happens there.
Oh, yeah. I think, at first when I looked at, I think people have been talking about crypto and AI for a long time, by the way. It's not something new. I think back then I did believe a lot of it was more hype than real. But more recently, I think, with the rise of large language models and other things, there are many things that are possible. So first of all, building smart contracts, we just talked about auditing, for example. That is a big process of getting from ideation into production. The way that something like ChatGPT can help you to guide you, like, hey, ChatGPT, can you write me a simple contract for doing like a simple swap or escrow service? those kind of things will help onboard tons of new developers into our space. When we have tens of thousands of developers in Web3, there are millions of developers who work across all like software stacks around the world. And so I think those kind of tools are going to be amazing in terms of helping to onboard users, even start to do things like, again, like with Move, you have this kind of cool thing around a Move prover and formal verification. Help me write the formal verification specs to ensure that resources are conserved even after these operations are held. Like those kind of complicated operations that now improve our auditability of our code and actually are run every single time I try to launch a new feature on the blockchain is going to help us to move faster in this space. And so those are kind of a couple of examples where AI and like large language models can help us to develop more quickly and actually assist in smart contracts platforms and help educate users in how to build in this space more effectively. And then, if I have more time, I know we're running out of time, so I'll just kind of jump in real quickly. The other thing is blockchain has the ability to kind of do some kind of decentralized learning, which is really interesting. So federated learning, for example, where you kind of maintain privacy of user data, being able to share that data in a way that can be accessible for machine learning and for large-scale training, can be done using the blockchain. And I think that's another interesting area that we're particularly excited about, given our background and kind of my background. Just to be clear, I've worked in data infrastructure for a long time, worked on things like Hadoop, MapReduce, Hive, distributed scheduling, all those fun things. And so I see that kind of intersection being very interesting in terms of to process data at a very, very large scale in a way that kind of rewards the creators of that content as well.
I guess I have two main things. Yeah, certainly I think the decentralized training aspect. Every cycle of crypto has had someone say that. So 2015, it was like Golem. 2018, it was like Definity. All the L1s right now kind of saying that. But there are actually some quite interesting improvements in decentralized training that aren't just strictly, hey, whatever, you post some state proof that like I did a single operation correctly. There's actually sort of like some mechanisms people have made for fraud proofs where I can be running a GPU training part of a model, you can be running a GPU training part of a model, and the person who's requesting it can send us particular tests of whether, hey, are you just giving me random numbers, or are you actually like running the algorithm, putting the data in? And those fraud proofs are actually super, super useful because there's actually been a ton of fraud in terms of like training stuff where people just give you random numbers back instead of actually running stuff on your data. And so there's that part is actually gotten way better, and that's all because of ZK people. That's not because of the consensus stuff. The other side of the ZK coin is algorithmic provenance. So how do you know that something came from an algorithm or a human or an algorithm that has access to particular data? And so the slight chills, I guess I've written some blog posts about this week, so it's like on my mind. But there's a natural question of like, can you generate a form of proof where a language model can prove to you that it was trained on a particular data set? Like, oh, this language model was trained on the corpora of CoinDesk consensus transcripts, and this other language model is just the default GPT-4. Can they interact with each other to generate a proof to you that one knows that it was trained on this other particular type of data, and then generate something that looks like a ZKP that's posted publicly? So the idea of having algorithmic provenance, I think, is actually one of the most important things that people are really realizing is important, because everyone here has read something where like, oh, well, yeah, that's definitely from ChatGPT. But you've also probably read things where like, that sounds like it's almost human. And being able to actually have a distinct line for that that's verifiable is going to be very important in the next 5 years.
So to be clear, I don't disagree with any of your points, but nothing that you said there, like what you basically described is advancements in cryptography that have been subsidized by a lot of stuff happening in blockchains are going to have broader use cases, especially with the intersection of machine learning. Totally agreed. I don't know that in principle any of that requires you to post that on a blockchain.
So the provenance piece, I think, does need to be posted. So publicly being able to verify that a particular model gives a particular output, and that it was made by a model, not a human, or it's made by a particular registry, is actually going to be quite important. Because especially as you talk about things where people have fine-tuned data sets for, my custom model does X better than yours, being able to prove that you own that is going to be very important, because that's the IP of the future, right? The IP is that.
That's fair. That's fair.
That's the argument of knowledge.
That is okay. That is a fair argument. That is a fair argument. Okay, we're running up on time, so unfortunately we have to wrap.
Sorry for my rant.
No. That was a great rant. That's a natural way to end a talk like this. Thank you all for listening. See you all next time. Thanks, everyone.